Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're tackling Gabriel García Márquez's famous and, honestly, super bizarre short story, A Very Old Man with Enormous Wings. Whether you're diving into this for the very first time or prepping for a class discussion, we're going to break down exactly what goes down in this wild tale and, what it actually means.
But hey, before we jump in, I want you to picture something. What would you do if a winged man crashed right into your backyard? Seriously, imagine it. It's been pouring rain for days. You step outside into the muck, and bam, there's a living, breathing person with giant wings just thrashing around on the ground. Would you help him out? Call for backup? Maybe just run in the other direction? Keep that in your head, because the characters in our story react in a way that's going to totally catch you off guard. Okay, let's dive into this and look at our roadmap. First, a strange visitor arrives. Then, the captive angel. Next, a new carnival attraction. After that, the author and the genre. And finally, what does it all mean? All right, part 1. A strange visitor arrives. So, the story kicks off on this incredibly gloomy, rainy day. A guy named Pelayo is just walking across his courtyard when he stumbles on something shocking. He finds this very old man, but guys, he does not look magical at all. I mean, he's face down in the mud, he's got these enormous, incredibly dirty, half-plucked buzzard wings, he's dressed like a rag picker, someone who just collects scraps and trash. He's mostly bald, barely has any teeth left, and basically looks like a drenched, miserable great-grandfather. When Pelayo and his wife Elisenda try talking to him, he answers in this totally incomprehensible dialect, but with this really strong, booming sailor's voice. Because he looks so completely pathetic, they just figure, oh, he must be a lonely castaway from some shipwreck. But they aren't exactly sure, right? So they call over this neighbor woman who basically claims to know everything about everything. She takes one look at the poor guy and drops his bombshell. He's an angel, she says. She tells them he was probably coming for their sick child, but the poor fellow is just so old that the heavy rain literally knocked him right out of the sky. This right here sets up the entire core conflict. Suddenly, this muddy, smelly old guy is seen as a divine, heavenly creature. Moving right along to part 2, the captive angel. Now, if you found an actual angel in your yard, how would you treat him? You'd probably give him a warm bed, maybe a nice meal, right? Well, brace yourselves, because Pelayo literally drags the angel out of the mud and locks him up inside a wire chicken coop with the hens. It's crazy! And get this, right after they do that, their sick kid wakes up completely cured. No fever, perfectly fine. You'd think that would make them super grateful. And yeah, for a second, they feel a little generous and think about putting the angel on a raft to sail away. But the very next morning, they find the entire neighborhood crowded around the chicken coop, tossing food through the wire like the angel is just some circus animal, instead of a supernatural being. The crowd gets absolutely massive. The courtyard turns into this chaotic marketplace, and it gets so out of hand they literally have to call in troops to control the mob. And that's when Pelayo and Elisenda get this brilliant, albeit super greedy, idea. They put up a fence and start charging 5 cents for admission to see the angel. Now, 5 cents doesn't sound like much, but man, it adds up fast. People are flocking from all over the place, including sick folks hoping for a miracle cure. In less than a week, their house is practically overflowing with cash. They make so much money off this 5-cent fee that they build a massive 2-story mansion with balconies, beautiful gardens, netting to keep the crabs out, and iron bars, ironically to keep angels from getting in. Pelayo straight up quits his job, and Elisenda starts buying all these fancy dresses and high heels. But here's the wild part. While these humans are getting filthy rich, think about his miserable situation. People try feeding him mothballs, which he totally rejects, by the way, and he ends up eating nothing but eggplant mush. Yet, despite this awful, degrading treatment, the angel is astonishingly passive. He just sits there. He doesn't fight back. The text actually notes that his only supernatural virtue seemed to be patience. He just lets the hens peck at his wings looking for bugs. He completely ignores the sick people who are literally pulling out his feathers to rub on themselves. He doesn't even react when some so-called merciful people throw stones at him just to see him stand up. He's totally checked out, just trying to find a somewhat comfortable spot in his filthy nest. Which brings us to part 3, a new carnival attraction. Now, what's really interesting here is how quickly the town's obsession fades. A traveling carnival rolls into town, bringing a brand new attraction, the Spider Woman. And the crowd, they drop the angel in a heartbeat. Why? Well, just look at the comparison. To them, the angel was boring. He just sat there eating eggplant mush, and let's face it, he cost more to see.
But the Spider-Woman, she had this incredibly dramatic backstory. She was turned into a giant tarantula with a human head by a lightning bolt, all because she snuck out to a dance without permission. Plus, her admission fee was way cheaper. And the absolute kicker, she actually talked to them. She'd answer everyone's questions about her absurd state. Basically, the crowd vastly preferred a chatty, entertaining monster over a silent, passive miracle.
Let's map out how this builds across the angel's entire stay, just to make sure the sequence of events is crystal clear. Day 1. He crashes in the mud. Weeks later, he's fully locked in that coop, getting exploited while the family gets rich. Then, years pass. Seriously, years. The coop eventually rots away from the sun and rain, and the angel just kind of drags himself around their new mansion like a dying man. During this time, a doctor actually examines him and finds these weird whistling sounds in his heart and kidneys. But the craziest part is the logic of his wings. The doctor thinks they look so incredibly natural on a human body that he wonders why we don't all have them. Finally, we hit his last days. After barely surviving a brutal winter, the sun comes out. He starts growing these stiff, new feathers that look like a scarecrow's. Elisenda is just watching from her kitchen as he clumsily flaps his wings, slowly gains some altitude, and finally flies away over the ocean, no longer a nuisance in her fancy life.
All right, part 4, the author and the genre. Let's shift gears for a second. Who actually came up with this brilliant, strange story? That would be Gabriel García Márquez. He was a legendary Colombian novelist who lived from 1927 to 2014, and he's widely considered one of the absolute greats of the 20th century. He had a massive impact on Latin American literature, so much so that he was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1982. You might have heard of his really famous heavyweight novels, like 100 Years of Solitude or Love in the Time of Cholera. He is truly a titan of literature. And you can't talk about García Márquez without talking about magical realism. This is absolutely crucial to understand. Magical realism is a narrative style that paints a picture of the real, everyday world, but weaves in this hidden undercurrent of magic or fantasy. It completely blurs the line between what's real and what's impossible. Think about it. Our story takes this incredible, magical concept of a winged angel, but dumps him right into the stinky, dirty reality of a mud puddle and a chicken coop. The magic isn't some sparkly fairy tale. It's just treated like another messy, annoying part of normal, everyday life. And finally, part 5. What does it all mean? So, the crucial point is, what does this all mean? Let's break down the 3 massive themes at play here. First up, human greed. Pelayo and Elisenda don't see a miracle to be worshipped. They see a cash cow. They exploit this divine being to build a mansion and buy fancy clothes. Second, we have that blending of magic and reality we just talked about. The prime example is the doctor who examines the angel and just decides, yep, these giant wings look perfectly logical. And third, the true nature of miracles. This is huge. The townspeople totally overlook the divine because it doesn't look pretty. They want an angel to be glowing and gorgeous, not bald, muddy, and toothless. Because he doesn't fit their narrow expectations, they treat him like absolute garbage. Which brings me back to this really vital quote from the story. His only supernatural virtue seemed to be patience. And this brilliantly illustrates the central irony of the whole text. Just look at the dynamic here. The humans, the ones who think they are so civilized and normal, are the ones acting monstrously. They're greedy, they're totally cruel, and they treat a living being horribly. But the angel, the guy they lock up in a dung heap like a circus animal, he's the only one who actually shows divine calm, tolerance, and patience. The humans act like wild animals, and the supposed animal is the only one who actually behaves like an angel. So that leaves us with a lot to chew on regarding human nature. As we wrap up this explainer, I've got a question for you to take back to your class. Did Pelayo and Elisenda actually deserve their fortune? I mean, sure, they gave the angel a place to stay, and eventually he was able to fly away. But they also locked him in a cage and exploited him to build themselves a mansion. So what do you think? Did they deserve it? Think about how they reacted to the extraordinary, and what that might say about us. Thanks so much for hanging out and exploring this masterpiece of magical realism with me. I really hope it helps you see the profound, strange beauty in García Márquez's world.